Okay, hi. So, welcome to my presentation. So, this is a joint research by me and my colleague from Securing, but he could not attend this time. So, we are pen testers. Yeah, well, this is some corporate blabbling, I have to say. So, we do security assessments of applications and networks and all of different systems, which also contains some devices. And actually, this talk will be about weird devices which connect to the internet or to the networks through proprietary network protocols. So I will show you a few case studies which we found during our penetration tests. So we are talking about home automation, pool printing solutions, some forex trading software, and remote desktops. I've got a few other examples if I have enough time. And I would also like to show you some cheat sheets of how to develop proprietary network protocols, how to do it properly and securely. Okay. So, well, probably some of you are pen testers. Have you encountered a proprietary network protocol during your penetration tests? Any? Yeah. Okay, great. So, it's obvious. You don't know how to create requests with this proprietary network protocol. You don't have documentation, and you cannot connect well-known local proxies like Burp or Zapprox or whatever, which works with HTTP, right? So you have to do something. Decompile the client, maybe search for some tools, maybe Google for the documentation of a closed protocol, maybe just watch the raw packets. So let's give it a try. The first example is with a home automation device. So it works just like that. You have to buy the appliance. The appliance is just a box which you connect to the internet, and it has the output, and it collects the input from your smart home. Additionally, you get a mobile application, for example, for Android, from which you can control your smart home. And during this test, we found some proprietary network protocol, which is working from the mobile application to the server, to this box. And I would like to show you the Wireshark capture from this box. So, so the client is actually the box, and the server is the cloud service, which is provided by the appliance vendor. So the authorization to this device is just a password without any username or something. Yeah, well, so obviously all of the requests from this box contained some similar fragment of the packet, right? Well, what we first tried to do was changing the password to this appliance. So we took 3 of these passwords, and actually only these 10 bytes changed. So, well, obviously, do you know any 10 bytes hash function or something like that? Well, probably it was cut or something like that. So let's give it a try. Let's disassemble this protocol and try. We actually tried to brute force, actually find all hashing algorithms of this password, trying to solve this and so on. And we found that it is MD5, but only the first 10 bytes of the MD5 of password. So actually, what was possible? It was sniffing the traffic and actually perform active man-in-the-middle attack and collect the information and actually break the access control, because you don't need a password if you can just replay the packets. Okay, well, the vulnerability here was not very strong or not very complex, but I would like to show you what was the process of getting vendor to fix this. Yeah, so these were the risks. So as always, we try to contact vendors, and we wrote him a report that he's got some vulnerabilities in his appliance. So he said, okay, I will patch it by, as you said, I will patch it by SSL. So in the mobile application, the new version that was in the Play Store, there were new 4 lines. And does anybody see like vulnerability here in the SSL connection? Yeah. Yeah, well, the trust manager is empty. So the server will actually accept all of the certificates, any certificate. So the man in the middle is still possible, right? Okay, here's a funny thing. So my friend, who is actually building his own smart home, didn't want to buy a big appliance, which was very expensive. Actually, this box just cost about like £1,000. And he emulated everything that was in this box by a simple Raspberry Pi connected to his sensors and everything in the smart home, and writing 1 line of bash code, which emulated the first version of the software. And after adding the SSL, it was actually still 1 line of code, but a little bit longer. So this is how it works. Okay. Now, let's move to the example that is a little bit more complex. We often see that in proprietary network protocols, the outer layer is very obscure, like, I mean, it's hidden and you don't get documentation. But underneath, there are a lot of vulnerabilities connected to access control, like function access control, data access control. And I did a big research on pull printing solutions, which probably you know how it works. You don't print directly to the server, to the printer. You print through the job server, and you collect these things at the printer by swiping your card or entering your username. And the printer requests the job files from the server. Yeah, well, it's getting very popular right now, and actually the biggest risk in pull printing solution is stealing confidential data, right? Like getting the print queue of a CEO, right? So the biggest risks for a pull printing solution is sniffing the traffic from the server to the printer, also from the user computer to the server, getting to the other print queues, tampering the accountability, because in some companies you have right to print like, let's say, 100 pages a day, and not more, and also stealing users' data and users' credentials. So let's see, yeah, well, so sniffing is done here, access to the other print queues. Here you've got the vector attacks. Okay, let's move to the vendor claims. Before the test, we really like to open the vendor website and see what is he claiming. So this one is saying that he's got roots in education, and he understands that college kids like to hack. So they're focusing on security, and they ensure that it's completely secure and documents are printed only when the collecting user is present. We always like to verify vendor claims. So let's see the binary protocol in this pull printing solution. So here is like a quality analysis of this protocol, of the packets, of the raw packets on the cable. The print server sends a short hello message. After a user swipes his card at the printer sends his username. The server responds with some token. The printer sends a hash of these passwords and token. The server verifies it, and the printer sends a message to release the print queue of this user, and also, let's say, charge me for printing 100 pages. Take it from my balance. And the server responds. So I'd like to ask you, where is the point that we will attack here? Which packet is the most interesting, yeah? Okay, let's see how it works, how it looks on the cable. So the blue communication is from the server. The server sends some permissions about the user to the printer. So for example, that he can he can print color pages because some of the users could not. So our first idea was to change the data that is about the permissions, and it actually worked. So after changing this value, well, previously it was can't, or there was no color copy, so the user could not copy in color. We changed it that he can, and after this, a printer sends the file, it is printed in color, and the server does not verify if really this user can print in color. It was only changed in the user interface on the printer. So what about the attack that you mentioned? Here you've got begin device transaction of the guest XYZ, and actually the user was already authenticated in the previous request, in the previous communication. So what is the point of sending username here? Well, the point is that, well, we can change it now on the cable. We did it, and it worked. So actually, we were able to release the print queue of other user, and what is even more funny, the account that was charged for printing these pages was his account, because later there was another transaction for charging user account for printing these jobs. So actually, attacking this protocol showed us that all the key risks were broken here. So we could sniff, we could print the other print queues, tamper the accountability, and actually get other users' data. And communication with this vendor was very nice. I mean, this happens it's not very common. So he gave us access to his knowledge base and the other versions of his software, because on his website there was only educational version of his software. He got some enterprise pool printing solution for big companies, and he also wanted to see if it's secure. So we also found some vulnerabilities there. And he really liked that we pen tested him. I don't know if it happens to you, if you pen test a vendor like completely black box without the order or the request. Vendors don't look happy to be pen tested, do they? Okay, now let's get to another example, which is quite more complicated and very funny for us. We tested one of remote desktop protocols. These protocols are optimized for the latency or for the amount of data that is sent through the cable. So the vendor claims that his solution is very secure. It is really, we've seen this in one of the banks. It is used for critical business operations. And they claim that they are validated with the FIPS norm, which is quite strict. And they provide end-to-end data encryption. So let's see if it's really end-to-end encryption. So the communication was, for the first look, it was very simple. The client sent 4 bytes to the server. The server responded with 4 bytes. And there was a big load of communication, which was actually SSL. So if you would tamper these requests, where would you tamper? Where would you change anything? Okay, well, so first idea was to change these values, but actually it didn't change anything. The communication was still this way. But when we tampered this value, which is 0B, which stands for 11, right? We changed it to just 01. Do you have any idea what would happen? Yeah? Well, when we read like 500 pages of documentation of implementing this solution in the corporation, we found that it is backwards compatibility, because some of older versions of this software are still used. In critical business infrastructure, it's unlikely to be updated. So to be backwards compatible, they just provided an option to connect with an old version of protocol, and this old version of protocol didn't support SSL. So first of all, the man-in-the-middle attack was possible. In the communication, we found the username and the password, which was encoded. So we changed the password to a long one. It's the ASCII hex of this password. On the cable, we got this encoded password. So, like the first thing you would say about this, is it the hash function of this password? Well, not really, because the length of this is the same of this, right? So any other encryption algorithms or ciphers do you know? Well, I've heard somewhere XOR, right? So you know how XOR works, right? You XOR the password, like the plain text, with the key, and you receive the ciphered text. But if you XOR ciphered text with the plain text, you receive the key, which was actually, this is redacted, it was actually the name of the company, Communications Limited. So, and actually in the binary executable file of this solution, you could actually find this data too. So all the communication was, the password was encoded with XOR and this key. Okay, so let's focus on the SSL version of this solution. The default configuration was like that. The client connected with his cipher suits. The server responded with no certificates and this cipher suit. So what's specific about this cipher suit? Yeah, it's anonymous. So whatever you do a man-in-the-middle attack and you put any certificate, you don't have to do this, actually, because the server does not send any certificate. Okay, it was default configuration. There was an option in this software to switch to the certificate version of SSL. Yeah, well, this was the one thing. So this time, certificate responded with some non-anonymous cipher suits. And there was a certificate pinning implemented. So for the first connection, the server stored the client certificate. And on the following connections, if you tried to do a man-in-the-middle attack with a wrong certificate, it alerted with an error. So what would you do? One more time? Yeah? Okay. Well, what we did was trying to not do this like the server wanted it to do, but be backward compatible with the first one. So even that the server sends non-anonymous suits, we tried to connect with no certificate. So this time, if you connect with a wrong certificate, the server responded with an error, but if you change the communicate from the server to the client, and client thought that it should be anonymous suit, and the client responded with no certificate, the server responded, okay, let's connect. So yeah, a lot of backwards compatibility vulnerabilities there. Yeah, this communication with this vendor was really hard. We tried to send them our report, and we tried to encrypt this, but they didn't know PGP. And they asked us to use a zip file with CEO's name as a password, but when we opened their website, there was 5 CEOs in this company. Okay, so finally, after like 1 month of doing some phone calls, sending emails, and so on, we achieved like a proper encrypted channel. And they responded, sorry, we do not plan to solve these issues. They completely ignored our emails. They said that they've got so many clients that updating all this for their customers would be impossible. So we disclosed it publicly, completely, on a full disclosure list. It was about like 1 or 1.5 years ago. Well, and a few weeks later, the full disclosure was closed. I hope it was not because of us. Okay. Another example is also encryption vulnerability in proprietary network protocol. So the vendor claims that this printing solution safeguards document confidentiality, blah, 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 and provides airtight security. When I see such claim, I take out my laptop and try to hack. The vendor ensures that all key risks of this solution, it's not possible to break them because everything is confidential, it's safe anytime and anywhere, and it's secure. Okay, so the first look of the communication was, the whole communication was on 2 TCP ports. There was no SSL, like, for example, the Wireshark did not recognize it as SSL, but it seemed to follow some scheme, and I would like to show you this scheme. So this is a quantitative analysis of the traffic from the print server to the printer. So first, like 3 short communicates, then a lot of small communication, and a huge amount of data. So if it's like whole communication is 1.1 megabyte, and this is 1.05 megabytes, so what is it in printing solution? Files. Okay. So more quantitative analysis. The first communicate was always constant 263 bytes. It looked like that. There is some crypt, so probably there is some encryption. The second one was some padding. On the end, also some padding, and this was X bytes. This X was 512 in the administrative interface, there was an option of RSA 512 bytes. So what is it? Probably a public key. Well, actually not a public key, but like an exponent of public key, right? Okay. Always different 64 bytes. So if they are trying to do something like SSL, probably if this was a public key for asymmetric encryption outside, this is encrypted with this public key, the token key for session key for the symmetric encryption inside, right? Now we've got this huge amount of data, and in the Wireshark capture, we've seen that there are many, many identical 16 bytes blocks. And I would like to ask you, how must have been these files encrypted that these are many identical blocks? Anybody? Yeah, well, so if you encrypt, for example, a bitmap with an ECB mode of encryption, electronic code break, you cannot get the right colors, but you probably will at least know the shapes. So the print files are actually quite the same. These are PostScript files, which are text files, and actually you cannot get exact words of the print file, but you can get some scheme. So you can crack it. Okay, so this was some kind of a hello message, then a hello certificate, session key for the symmetric encryption side, and these were the PostScript print files encrypted in ECB mode of encryption. It was a very bad idea. So we found in the embedded software that was installed on the printer, hard-coded RSA certificates. On the server, there was no trust store. So the man-in-the-middle attack was possible just by changing this 512 bytes. Nonetheless, what was the key size if it was 2,000 bytes or more? Yeah. So the same as, we found the same protocol in the admin interface. So we could do also the man-in-the-middle attack for the administrator of this device. Of course, the consequences of this attack are pretty the same. All of the key risks for a pull printing solution were broken. We could do actually all of the attacks. Okay, how much time do I've got? So we tried to notify this vendor, and he responded that, sorry, many of the devices do not have the CPU power, and we like features, small latency and speed, than security. Does it happen to you? Well, they claimed that changing ECB to CBC mode of encryption would cause slower performance, and their customers are very reluctant to see it implemented, right? Well, actually, on one-threaded processors, changing ECB to CBC mode of encryption does not cause a slower performance. And actually, they told us that, no, sorry, we've got no vulnerabilities. You could not find vulnerabilities because the system has already passed some internal audits in big companies. So, yeah. Very, very hard vendor to communicate and to achieve like a proper patch for the report. Okay, now I want to present you the most interesting example from proprietary network protocols. We had possibility to test a trading protocol for the Forex industry. So actually the software that clients log into and put some real money, take a big risk, and win or lose, rather lose. So it was an online application, but it communicated through a proprietary network protocol. It was binary to minimize the delays. And it was actually TCP in the SSL tunnel, so we had to do a man-in-the-middle attack first. There was some pinning. It was not possible to do a man-in-the-middle attack on the other customer, on the other client, but just in our lab, we were able to do a man-in-the-middle attack and tamper the communication inside. So we've been sitting like a few days on the what was in the inside in these communications, sitting the next day, and we didn't find anything until one day when there were some HTML fragments, and on the next one, we've seen something like this, which closer looks like that. It is SOAP communication, right? SOAP message, the response from the server. Now, we can, let's say, suppose that this is the path for the web service, and the method is cluster, right? So we tried to brute force other methods in this communication. We found some admin service, but there were some exceptions. After doing some brute forcing, we found the method which was called register user. Why it was in the client interface, not only in the admin interface, we don't know. So the answer for an empty request with the method register user was incorrect login. So what do? You just add another entity with the login, right? And it responds with incorrect password. So you put a password in this. It responds with incorrect first name. Actually, all of the form inputs were responded as an error. So we put a first name, and it responded that group with name null does not exist. If you would like to choose a group for your user in the Forex trading software, what would you choose? Admin. Admin does not exist. Another. Administrator, you said. Does not exist. Anyone? Root. And the answer for changing this was... So this was an installation of Forex software for one of the banks. So the banks in Forex industry are, there are some groups of banks, and if you can imagine like the whole amount of money that is on the Forex software, this bank could do transaction about like 1/1000 of the whole amount. Well, it's still enough. It's still enough. Okay, so it was very epic fail. The user, of course, had all the administrator rights, could put false money on the accounts and so on, and completely tampering the accountability of this system. When we contacted the vendor, actually the bank contacted the vendor, they could not get how we hacked this solution because they've got a firewall. And they thought that we physically went into their location, to their server, and put a cable here, I don't know, drop a drone with a Wi-Fi hacking tool or something. And it was very hard to explain them that we just tampered the proprietary network protocol, which was coming through the firewall because it was the accessible way of contacting this. Okay. So, okay, 10 minutes. I would like to show you some cheat sheet if you are owner of such solution, or if you are a buyer of solution which uses proprietary network protocol. So first of all, get it pen tested, verify vendor claims, and ask how do this vendor address vulnerabilities which could be found by any hacker or somebody. See how previously found bugs were addressed and if were they patched, of course. And if you are a developer of such solution, well, remember, security by obscurity doesn't work. So use a proper encryption and don't try to write your own encryption algorithms because if you are not a specialist in that field, probably you will fail. So remember about that the protocol is only the outer layer. Maybe it's impossible to do a man-in-the-middle attack of the outer protocol, but in the lab, you could do a man-in-the-middle attack for yourself and tamper the communication inside. And of course, beware the backwards compatibility as in the remote desktop protocols. The question is, because I think that most of you are pen testers or specialists in that field, how to hack protocols. There is actually, I found that there is another presentation about proprietary network protocols at InfoSecurity Europe. I contacted the guy, I think it was Daniel Mende, who is creating a low-key software which works somehow like Scapy. Do you use Scapy for proprietary? Yeah. Well, these are some ways. For example, for me, if I was trying to hack these protocols with Scapy, probably it will take me twice more time than I did it by myself, just with small Python or PHP scripts. Well, so like a funny thing is that you should really Google for it. We found some unofficial client just in the internet, but really funny was finding on Google, actually in the Russian internet, the documentation of the proprietary network protocol used in the forex trading software, which is actually unacceptable if you handle with such amount of money and software which handles such amount of money. Okay. So, of course, you could decompile the client. It's, well, if it's an Android application without obfuscation, it's very easy, right? Or .NET application. But sometimes it can be really time-consuming, and the time consumed on that will be not really good used, right? So, well, our approach to testing these protocols is actually watching the raw packets and trying to think what developers could write about this solution that it looks like this on the cable. Well, try to spot some scheme. So we tried to use some machine learning to find a scheme in the communication, but actually it does not work. Like we invented more with our brains than machine learning thing. Well, of course, for this research, we mostly used Wireshark, TCP dump, SSL dump, and our own scripts in Python and PHP to intercept traffic on the TCP layer. Yeah, well, Well, I think I've got a few more minutes. I would like to show you some more examples of proprietary network protocols. Once we tested industrial systems for tracking RFID tags. There was some appliance with access to the internet and with Modbus TCP protocols. Well, this is some interface, web interface of this solution. Well, it's not very interesting. What is interesting, there was RFID reader at the gate of the company, and it read all the RFID tags which were on the trucks and automatically opened the gate. So this box had some open ports. In the documentation of this, we found that sending an RFID to this box is also possible for Telnet on the port 4007, and you have to put these raw values on the cable. So, of course, we connected with this, and we could open the gate just from the actually LAN network of this solution. But the proprietary network protocol it's not very complicated here. Okay, and here in the hex dump of this communication, we found the RFID tags identifiers. But actually, should we worry about this? Like, what is the problem? There was a physical security guy over there, so he could watch if we are entering with a wrong car or not with a truck. But there is, now it's a big hype on Bluetooth smart IoT things, which use cloud and computing and so on. Well, there is a slides about Bluetooth, but I want to show you this funny thing. Well, there are some, for example, NFC tags, Bluetooth tags in the museum, so you can see what is on the image or on the picture that is in the museum. Well, that's not very interesting, but there is a thing called cruise control for pedestrians. Anybody heard about this? So this is a Bluetooth device which contains some electrodes. You put it on the legs. Well, why does it not work? Okay. And from the Bluetooth, from the mobile application, you can move somebody's leg. Right? So if you hack this communication, this protocol on the wire, yeah, it works like automatically. That's what they're claiming. Our first idea, like, what would happen if you hack this solution, right? Well, this. Okay. Well, there are many different devices. Like there is Smart Cup, which tests what is inside the drink, and it communicates with the mobile application through Bluetooth. And actually, Bluetooth is, well, it's not proprietary network protocol. There is documentation. Do you know how many pages is the Bluetooth low energy documentation? To actually create packets and understand what's going on there, you have to read 3,000 pages. So we call it proprietary. And well, in my city, there was a hacking competition by a startup which invented appliance in the car, which connects with a mobile device, and you can open your car with a mobile application. And actually, we hacked this competition, even though somebody told them that it's unbreakable because the use of AES. And actually, the topic of connected cars is very big now. Like BMW, Audis, and Volkswagens are implementing all their connected car devices, which you can open the car with the mobile device. You can control the air conditioning. Well, I've got some funny stories about that when I entered the Volkswagen dealer and tried to hack this connected car. But okay, maybe that's for the after party. Okay, I would like to really thank you for attending my presentation. Well, my company invented some like a thing for a better world. We provide free consultancy of security We spend 1 hour per week for a free consultancy. If you have any, not only business, like you have private concerns about security, you can ask this. Well, the link is in Polish, but if you send me an email, actually I can send you the English version, sorry. And if you have got any questions, you can ask me, and leave your business card if you want the presentation or my other presentations.